Today I want to talk about porn addiction and how you can overcome it, especially since it's November, and so I think it's the right time of the year to be talking about something like this. And there are a lot of people, especially men, who are struggling with this a lot. And today I want to give my theory on how you can overcome the urge to watch, and how do you say it, goon, or however, to the hub. And so, in order to understand how to solve the cravings, you have to first understand why the cravings exist and how exactly the cravings work. And in order to understand how the cravings work, you have to understand how neurology in general works. So, I want to illustrate this because otherwise you will not understand. So, you have to understand how the brain works. And the way it works is that it consists of many different brain cells or neurons. And there are many different neurons that are connected to each other. One neuron is connected to another neuron, which is then connected to another neuron, which is then connected to another neuron, and so forth. And the way the brain works is that there are many signals that travel from one neuron to another and then from another to another. And I'm not completely sure if this is exactly like scientifically how it works, but it really explains like everything. Basically, let's say all the neurons hold a different thought. Let's say this neuron holds the thought of red. So whenever you think of the color red, this neuron gets activated. And from there, a signal gets traveled to this neuron, which carries another thought, let's say rose. Whenever you think of the color red, the next thought that immediately pops up is roses. Red. Oh, roses are red. This is the color red. Oh, it's just like roses. Roses are red. And roses are in a garden. There's a garden in my house. I like houses. For example, this neuron activates this neuron, which activates this neuron, which activates this neuron. This thought activates this thought, which activates this thought, which activates this thought. Whenever you think of the color red, you will immediately think of roses, and then you will immediately think of garden, and then you will immediately think of house. However, let's now make it like this. And now I will explain how addiction in general works, how cravings in general work. And those are not just cravings for the hub, it's cravings for cigarettes, it's cravings for junk food, it's cravings for anything. Let's say there are, I will oversimplify this time, neurons connected to another neurons, because this is pretty much how the brain works. It's a network of different neurons, right? It's a network. However, when you form an addiction, what happens is that, let's say, I like to oversimplify like this, that this is the brain. At the end, you have those receptors that, for example, crave nicotine, which makes you have cravings for cigarettes. And I think it's basically the same with the corn addiction. There are basically receptors which They look like black, intimidating stars because that's what they are. They are intimidating, evil monsters. I'm gonna call them monster neurons. Because that's what they are. You have those horrible cravings because of freaking monsters. And what we have established previously is that neurons activate another neurons that activate another neurons that activate. And if those signals keep activating and travel and accidentally, whoops, slip up into a monster neuron, that's when you get the cravings. That's when you suddenly have to beat your meat to the hub. So what do you want to do? Don't allow the signals to ever come here. Don't allow the signals to come here. What does it mean? How do you prevent signals from traveling and coming here? Well, you prevent them from coming here. Don't come here and don't come here. Because whenever a signal comes here, that's when it might accidentally travel here or travel here or travel here, and you have another monster neuron over here. But when do the signals come here? How do you prevent signals in your brain to reach those specific neurons, which would then activate the monster neurons? Well, you have to ask yourself, in which situations do you exactly get the cravings? Most of the time, for example, when we get cravings for junk food, it's whenever we see junk food in front of us. We see hot Cheetos and we were like, oh, god damn it, I need some Cheetos right now, am I right? So we can, for example, say that whenever you see a bag of Cheetos, you activate this neuron, which then activates a monster neuron. So how do you solve it? Make sure you don't have a bag of Cheetos that you can see. Get rid of all the junk food in your house. But let's talk about porn addiction. Usually when you, for example, see an IG model, let's say this thing activates whenever you see an IG model. You see a hot woman with an hourglass physique in a bikini or whatever, and you activate this and you're like, god damn it, I have to fap to this. Or I have to see similar women on the hub or whatever. How do you solve it? Don't see IG models. Don't scroll on social media. That's how you don't activate this neuron. But a lot of the times, like I said previously, the neuron that holds the thought for red activates the neuron that holds the thought for rose. Those neurons typically hold thoughts. Let's say this neuron holds the thought for woman. This neuron holds for intercourse. Whenever you think woman or you think intercourse, that's when you immediately feel the need to go to the hub. So, don't think those thoughts. How do you not think those thoughts? Well, don't listen to anyone, for example, talking about intercourse. Avoid that. For me personally, there are several words. If I hear those words, I immediately get aroused. I'm not gonna reveal what words it is because I want to keep this personal so that I don't overshare things about myself for everyone to see. But there are certain words, and so I try not to hear those words. I try to avoid myself, avoid getting into situations where I could be hearing those words. Maybe if your example is apple, whenever you hear the word apple, you have a craving. Avoid getting yourself into situations where you would hear someone say the word apple. So what situations should you avoid, you may ask? Don't go to gardens. Don't go to neighbors' apple trees. Because as soon as you go there, you will either see apples or you will hear someone mention apples. Don't go to farms. Farms may have apples. Don't go to farms because farms may have apples. But this is only an example. And so this is quite obvious. Avoid all the situations that would activate those neurons, which would then activate the monster neurons. However, here is the less obvious thing. Usually whenever you avoid yourself of any situations, you get the cravings the most. Usually when you are bored, when you have nothing better to do. Why is that? Because that's when the brain tries to entertain itself by thinking a lot. And so a lot of signals will casually travel, and oops. Avoid getting yourself in a situation where you have to entertain yourself with your own thoughts. Because the thoughts are hard to control. As soon as you start thinking freely, you will accidentally think the wrong thought. You will accidentally activate this or this, and they activate this. So make sure you don't get bored. Always keep yourself busy. It's like that stereotype where you see people that quit smoking by eating sunflower seeds so that they can keep their hands occupied, so that they are unable to light a cigarette or whatever. It's kind of the same concept here. But does it mean you should distract yourself by scrolling on social media and do drugs so that you no longer are bored? No! Because here's the thing. If you have time to scroll on social media, and you have time to eat junk food or do drugs or whatever, then you have time to watch porn. Do you see the problem? Don't just distract yourself with anything. Distract yourself with doing something purposeful. I can't believe I have to sound like Hamza. I have to say it with a British accent so that you really get the point, but you have to do something purposeful. Do something where you can give value to your tribe. Occupy yourself with doing productive work. Whether it's working on your online business, studying, occupy yourself with that so that you don't have time to think freely. But this is my philosophy.